band of Cheyenne warriors. The surveyors were killed in the initial attack, but Randall, though he was wounded, managed to survive and hold off the Indians until he got help from a nearby mining camp. Now, when the miners came to rescue Randall, naturally the Indians fled. However, they left a number of Indians that Randall had shot and either killed or wounded. Now, this was the first encounter, as I said, that the Plains Indians had with the black man. They're strange creatures to him. So what they started to do, they started to spread the rumor that they were fighting a new, strange-looking type of soldier. This soldier, he had hair, is matted just like the head of the buffalo.
Mm.
His skin was brown, like the hide of the buffalo. He had dark eyes. He had dark, piercing eyes, just like the buffalo. And though he was wounded, he would fight like a wounded buffalo. So, as a sign of respect for this new adversary that they had, at first they were calling them wild buffaloes, and later that became buffalo soldiers. Or in the language of the two words of the Lakota Sioux, the words are Tatanka Akishita, which basically translates into the soldier who looks like a buffalo. That's how they got their name. And that's a little bit of history about them.
Okay, great. Wow, that's interesting. I've
Mhm.
I've heard talk before about the woolly hair, so it's interesting
Yeah.
that connection. That's
Yeah.
connection.
Mhm.
So let's talk a little bit about the transition from the horse to the motorcycle and some of the history of the motorcycle club, if you will.
Yes, ma'am. The transition, there are some Buffalo soldier units today that still ride horses. Places in Texas, I believe, they still ride horses. Um, and we have a Buffalo soldier brother, I believe he's in New Jersey. His road name is Cowboy. And if I'm not mistaken, I believe Cowboy has a ranch where he teaches kids and adults riding. I believe he has a riding stable. But we ride what they call iron horses, as opposed to the old cavalry riding horses. And our organization was founded in, I believe, 1993 by a Chicago police detective by the name of Ken Thomas. His road name is Dreammaker. And Dream's idea was to create a club that would pay homage to the African American soldiers of the Ninth and 10th Cavalry, as well as give community service or be involved in our local communities. We do such things on a whole. At this time, I'm sorry, at this time we have something like, I believe, 117 chapters of Buffalo Soldiers throughout the United States, as well as we have a chapter in South Korea and a chapter in Hawaii. Now, in each and every chapter, our uh, code, so to speak, is doing good in the hood. Okay, we give not only do we give presentations at schools, churches, and community centers, we're involved in local charities, providing scholarships for the youth, high school and grade school youth, um, toys for tot, the sickle cell um, foundation. We're involved in that because sickle cell, as you know, is a disease that really affects the African American community. Uh, so anything that food drives, Special Olympics, just about any and every thing that you could possibly name, where there's a community Thanksgiving turkey giveaway. As I said, it's just a number of things that we do throughout the community, in addition to riding motorcycles, because this is our main goal. We are a motorcycle club. And in our group, we have a diverse group. Um, Although it's primarily an African American group, we have members of all creed colors. We have black, white, uh, Asian, you name it. It's just we're just open. The only thing that we ask is that you be of good character, um, and be at least 21 years old, and have I believe it's a 750cc motorcycle. And the reason for that is because in doing the long rides, you need a bike that size to more or less the group.
Great.
Mhm.
Wow. That's interesting.
Mhm.
What year again did you
Yeah.
say that they started the clubs, the motorcycle club? What
Uh,
year?
1993 in Chicago, Illinois, by the
Okay.
Chicago police detective, and his name was Kid. His road name is Dream Maker, because that was his dream, to start a
Okay.
club, that would be involved in the community.
Okay. So they're just short of 3 decades then. Okay. Okay. They're fairly new.
Yes,
Okay.
ma'am. As a matter of fact, a couple of years back, we just celebrated our 25th anniversary.
Right. So you did I mention
Mhm.
did I hear you say Korea? There was also a chapter in Korea?
Oh, yes, yes, ma'am. Well, those were, um, I, I believe those were members that were discharged and stayed in Korea,
Okay.
and just formed the club there.
Gotcha.
Hawaii, some of the soldiers, I'm not sure about their origin, but I believe it was some of the soldiers that, pardon me, pardon me, had lived in California, and I believe they relocated to Hawaii. They just started a club there as well. You know.
Great, thank you. So let me go
Mhm.
back to the
Yeah.
American Revolution. You mentioned Crispus
Okay.
Attucks. That's kind of who I
Yes,
remember,
ma'am.
studying in school as I was growing up some time ago. Um, what was it about Crispus that was important? What should we know in our history about
Um,
Crispus? Crispus Attucks. Can you tell us a little more
the
about
fact,
him?
yes, ma'am. Well, the fact that he's basically he was a he was mixed. He was part Indian, I believe, as well as African American. I believe his father was African American, or and I believe his mother was an Indian. And he, along with four other white patriots, was at this on King Street at the time that the British decided to pardon me, decided to, they were, I guess, causing trouble or something, and they fired upon them. And Samuel Adams took that incident as uh, uh, a sign, or to say, let's we've been talking revolution all along and breaking away from King George. So hey, let's just take this opportunity to do that. Now, Addicts was a part of that, as I said, a part of that thing. But there were other individuals. One in particular that I'd really love to mention, and his name was James Roberts. Now, Roberts was, and I also mentioned him in the book. Roberts was a slave, and his owner was a gentleman by the name of Francis de Shields. Now, de Shields was a a colonel in Washington's army. So at the start of the revolution, Roberts, along with the Shields, went to fight. Okay. Now, he was promised his freedom if the Americans won the war. However, that was not to be. What happened was at the end of the Revolution, Roberts not only was still a slave, but these Shields had died. They had moved back to Maryland, and these Shields had passed away. So all of his property, including Roberts, was sold to a plantation owner down in New Orleans by the name, I believe his name was Smith, Calvin Smith, that owned this great plantation. Now that's important to note because during the second invasion, the War of 1812, New Orleans was the key to conquer the Mississippi and to move up into America. And the British knew that. The American army had been depleted. It was something like less than 7,000 men. So what happened was that Andrew Jackson, General Jackson, was desperate for men. So in defense of New Orleans, what he did was he recruited, I think it was Kentucky riflemen, um, Choctaw Indians, free black men, slaves, and a group of pirates under the command of John Lafitte. Now, the slaves came from Calvin Smith's plantation. Okay, James Roberts being one of them. The slaves were given that same promise during the revolution that they were given during the revolution, and that was if the Americans won the war, they would be set free. But after the Battle of New Orleans, and we all know about that, how the British were soundly defeated, the slaves were returned to the plantation. The reason for that is because the white townspeople of New Orleans were fearful of a slave revolt. So what they did was they convinced Andrew Jackson to return all the slaves back to slavery or back to the plantation. When Robert heard this, he said that had my gun been loaded, he would have shot Jackson. He would have killed him because that was the second time that the Americans had reneged on the promise of freedom. So, if we could just think about what would have happened had Jackson or had Roberts killed Jackson in New Orleans, Jackson never would have became president, which meant that he was the author of the Indian Removal Act of 1831. Now, the land that the Indians were removed from, Mississippi, Florida, Georgia, and all that, and moved west to what is now the state of Oklahoma, all of that land Andrew Jackson sold to white plantation owners. At that time, cotton was king. So you needed someone to work the cotton because all of this land was put or planted in cotton. You needed someone to work the cotton, and what better source of labor did they have at the time was slaves. So that extended slavery just a little longer because there was a lot of abolitionists in the North talking about, hey, let's abolish slavery. And plus, there were some European countries that had already abolished slavery. So by Jackson selling the land to these white plantations and they placing all this land in cotton or putting this land in cotton, that extended it just a little longer than it probably would have. So it's just so crazy sometimes.
Yes, it is.
Yeah.
It can be
Yeah.
very crazy. You mentioned the cotton and the removal of Native Americans, towards the
Mhm.
west and so forth.
Mhm.
I did want to mention Edward Baptiste has a book called has never been told: Slavery and the Making of American Capitalism. It's
Oh,
it's an excellent book that kind of addresses that whole removal
mhm,
of folks going,
mhm.
back across the country and being, pushed into cotton slavery,
Yeah,
if you will.
yeah. A lot of books were written. I think we call it the Trail of Tears because so
Right,
many of the innocent passed away from diseases, from cold, from hunger,
right,
and that long
right.
trek. And you got to keep in mind that they did all that on foot. You know.
Yep, that's right. That's right. I recently was doing some research related to free blacks during the 19th century, and many free blacks from Virginia and going forward north around, Maryland and so forth. A lot of free people were enslaved. They were captured and put into that trail that you're talking
Mhm,
about. They were captured,
mhm.
put on ships, and then shipped down to New Orleans and Mississippi and so forth. So it's very
Yeah.
interesting because it was a very precarious time for Black people in America back
Mhm,
then in the early 19th century. And there
mhm.
were slave catchers that were both men and women.
Yeah.
There were also people that looked like us that were involved
Mhm,
in those businesses,
mhm.
if you will, as well.
Yeah. And a lot of the slaves that were, or a lot of black men that was in that march, a lot of these came from Georgia because what had happened was that a lot of the runaway slaves from Georgia, they went into Florida and they, I guess what call assimilate the Seminole Indians. As a matter of fact, the black Seminoles were these escaped slaves from Georgia into Florida, and what
Right,
they were the scouts for the Buffalo Soldiers. Most of them were Seminole Indians. They were part black
right.
and part Seminole. Mhm.
And part what was the
Yeah,
last thing you
I don't.
said?
Oh, I'm sorry. Yeah,
They were
if
part. You said they were part what?
part black and part Seminole,
Okay,
Seminole Indians out of
right.
Florida.
And a lot of the enslaved people coming down from the Carolinas also came down across the St. Mary's River and went into
Came
Florida and connected
as
with
well
the
as
Seminoles. So
the same way as
you
well.
have this connection between the Gullah Geechee people, the Black people
Hmm.
on the coastal areas that went down to Florida and connected with the Seminoles as well. So there's
Hmm.
and then also you have the Bahamian connection coming up from
Oh yeah,
Florida as well, that they
yeah,
had a connection to
yeah,
the Seminoles as well.
yeah. But if I could go back to the revolution for just a moment,
Sure, of course, of course.
the the there were blacks that fought on the side of the British as well. See, um,
Mhm.
there was the governor of Virginia, Lord Dunsmore, I believe that was. He promised the same thing that the Americans did, that if those slaves fought on the side of the English, they would be set free. Now, a lot of those slaves were captured by the Americans and they were put into slavery, but some, even after England had lost the war, were put on a boat. First, they made a list of all of the blacks that fought on the side of the English, and this was called the Book of Negroes. What they did was they took them all to a port in New York, put them on an English ship, and from there they took them to some English colonies like Sierra Leone, Nova Scotia. This is how a lot of the blacks got up into Canada after the Revolutionary War. They were English that fought on the side of the English. So, and Sierra Leone, Nova Scotia, the Bahamas, and a couple of other islands that were English colonies. So they came out a lot better than the American slaves. Some were set free, but the majority were placed back into slavery.
Okay.
Mm.
So, what about? Let me ask you a little bit about the Korean War, particularly since you've had a personal experience with the Korean War. Can you talk a little bit about that?
No, I wasn't. I was, believe it or not, young enough, old enough rather, to be in Korea.
Oh, my
I
mistake. You were in South
no,
Korea, but you weren't in the
I
Korean
served.
War. I
Yes,
apologize.
but not the war. Um, you sound like one of my brothers when they always said how old I am. but but if I can, there were a couple of Medal of Honor winners during the Korean War. But I'd like to, if as opposed to Korea, touch on the Spanish American War
Okay.
and the great hero of the Spanish American War, Teddy Roosevelt. Now, the story behind that is that most people, when you think of the Spanish American War, you get the image of Roosevelt on a white horse charging up San Juan Hill with no mention of blacks, no mention of nobody but Roosevelt and the Rough Riders. Now that happened, but when you read the actual accounts of the battle, you get a different picture. On that particular day in 1898, there were three engagements. There was the Battle of El Carney, and there was the Battle of San Juan Heights. Now, San Juan Heights consisted of San Juan Hill and Kettle Hill. Kettle Hill was so named because the Cubans used to process sugar in huge black kettles on the hill. El Carney, the battle took that El Carney took place first earlier that morning. The second battle, and Roosevelt was involved in that. The second battle was Kettle Hill. Roosevelt, along with members of the 24th, 25th Buffalo Soldiers, 9th and 10th Buffalo Soldiers, was also involved in that. Now, the final battle was the Battle of San Juan Hill. The man or the officer that started up the hill was a white lieutenant by the name of Julius Ord, ORD. Fort Ord, California, in California, where I took basic training, it was named in his honor. Lieutenant Ord had told a friend, because Ord was in the mode of, say, a John Wayne hero type. He told a friend that he would come back from Cuba either a colonel or a corpse. Unfortunately, he came back as a corpse because he was killed going up the hill. But he was leading a troop of Buffalo soldiers from the 10th Cavalry, black men. What happened was that Ord stood up. The Americans were taking heavy fire from the Spanish on top of the hill. Ord stood up, they said, with a saber in one hand and told his men, these Buffalo soldiers, come on, man, we can't stay here. Let's go. They started up the hill. Now, when the Buffalo soldiers started up the hill, all of the other forces, the American forces, saw this. They started up the hill as well. So everyone's charging up the hill. Ord was shot and killed in the process of going up the hill, but his actions inspired everybody, and they going up the hill. Everyone's going up the hill. In the process of taking the hill, there was a black sergeant by the name of, I believe, George Berry. He was carrying the flag or the standards of the Buffalo Soldiers. There was another sergeant, a white sergeant by the name of J.E. Anderson. Anderson was carrying the flag for the 3rd Cavalry, which was a white outfit. So all of these, now don't mention of the Rough Riders yet, okay? All of these soldiers going up the hill. Anderson was shot and killed. When Anderson fell, Berry the black standard bearer carrying the 10th Cav, he picked up the flag of the 3rd Cavalry, waving it, saying, "Come on, boys, let's go rally around the flags." Berry proceeded up the hill. The Americans took the hill. As they were taking the hill, this is when Roosevelt became involved. But they were in the process of taking the hill, and Roosevelt became involved at that particular time. Now, the reason that everyone think about Roosevelt and San Juan Hill is because Roosevelt had with him a gentleman by the name of Ernie Davis. Davis was a war correspondent, I believe, for the New York Telegraph or the New York Herald, I'm not sure. Everything that came of Cuba at the time showed Roosevelt in a favorable light. Roosevelt did this, Roosevelt did that, Roosevelt took this, Roosevelt did that. Everything, and even after the American forces had taken the hill, there was a picture, a panoramic picture on top of San Juan Hill that showed the entire assault forces on the hill. There were white members from the 3rd Cavalry, the 6th Infantry, the 1st Cavalry. There were Buffalo soldiers from the 9th and the 10th Cavalry, the 24th, 25th Infantry. All this panoramic shot on top of San Juan Hill. But the only picture that appeared in the American newspaper had these 2 units on the side cropped out, and it only showed Roosevelt and the Rough Riders under the American flag atop of San Juan Hill.
Wow.
Roosevelt, being the politician that he was, he had with him, if you remember, the start of the war was the sinking of the Maine in Havana Harbor. So Roosevelt, because at that time he was the Undersecretary of the Navy, had somehow secured and gotten the pistol that belonged to the captain of the Maine. And he carried that up San Juan Hill as if to say, this is the Maine taking revenge for being sunk in Havana Harbor. Yeah. He was a very, very, very shrewd politician. He was in charge. Roosevelt was not in charge of the Rough Riders when they arrived in Cuba. He was the deputy commander. Okay? The commander of the Rough Riders was a gentleman by the name of, he was a full bird colonel, and his name was Leonard Wood. Fort Leonard Wood, where I took basic training, is named in his honor. Leonard Wood was a full bird colonel. Okay? Roosevelt was his deputy. Leonard Wood was scheduled to take the charge up or take the Rough Riders up San Juan Hill, but somehow or another, Leonard Wood was promoted to the rank of Brigadier General just prior to the charge. And we all know generals don't lead charges. So the task of leading the charge fell on Roosevelt. Some people said that Roosevelt pulled strings to get Leonard Wood promoted to general, and some say it just happened by chance that he was promoted to general. But it's amazing when you pardon me, when you read not only the accounts of the battle, but you kind of read in between, well, how did all this happen, or why did all this happen? And lastly, if I might say, the most ironic thing that happened was that when Roosevelt and the Rough Riders, when they arrived at San Juan Hill, they were ambushed. They were almost wiped out at a place called La Gasima. I believe that's how you pronounce it, until members of the 10th Cavalry Buffalo soldiers saved them. They were almost wiped out when they first arrived in Cuba. Go figure.
Wow. Wow. Now
It's
that's
crazy.
very interesting because we never hear the story. Like you hear about Rough Riders, but you never
Yeah.
know really about the history, nor do you know about the history of the soldiers, our soldiers coming in to save them. So
Yeah.
that's quite
Yeah.
a,
And
a eye
and
opener for
and you know
me
who
anyway.
captured? If you've ever heard of Frederick Remington, the
I have not.
artist. Okay, if you look up Frederick Remington a portrait, and the title of the portrait was uh, "The Sound of Shrapnel," and it depicts that particular incident when the Rough Riders first arrived in Cuba and how the Buffalo Soldiers saved them from annihilation.
Wow.
Frederick Remington, and the title of the portrait, I believe, is "The Sound of Shrapnel."
Wow.
Go figure.
Okay. Okay.
Mhm.
I
Yeah.
also wanted to mention you talked about San Juan Hill, and it's interesting because later on, prior to World War One, that was a Black community in New York City, which is
Mhm.
now the area of Lincoln Center. It
Mhm.
was a community on the Upper West Side, and most of the residents were African American, African Caribbean,
Mhm.
Puerto Rican, and it was one of the largest Black communities in New York before World War One. So that's pretty interesting. I mean, I have relatives. I had like a grand aunt that lived down in San Juan Hill in New York City,
Oh, okay.
that
Yeah.
time. So that's
Yeah.
kind of interesting. After she migrated from South Carolina, that's where she lived.
Mm.
Her first trek in New York City was in San Juan
Yeah.
Hill.
Yeah. I'm not too familiar. My daughter lives there, is in New York, but I'm not too familiar with the area.
Yeah,
She
yeah.
lives
Well,
in
that's my home.
Brooklyn.
That's where I'm from originally. So
Ah, New Yorker.
yes,
Oh,
yes, yes.
yeah.
Okay. So
If I may too.
yes.
Oh,
Go
I'm
ahead.
sorry.
Go
Just
ahead.
go.
No, go ahead.
Well, I wanted to touch on another subject, another military subject in World War II. Let's see. In World War II, 7 African Americans won. I'm sorry, were awarded the Medal of Honor. One of them being Lieutenant John R. Fox. Now, what happened in Fox's case was that Fox was a forward observer. Forward observer being someone who goes ahead of the artillery, and he calls back to dispatch or to the fire control center, and they can shoot, the artillery off on a particular enemy objective. Fox was a forward observer in a small town, I believe, in Italy, when the town was overran by German forces. Now, the American units that were there, they had to withdraw. You never say retreat in the army. So instead of saying retreat, they had to withdraw. In other words, they had to get out of town because the Germans were overrunning the town. Fox stayed in his position, calling in artillery fire to cover the American forces that was leaving or withdrawing from the town. The dispatcher in the fire control center was telling him, hey, these rounds, they're getting too close to your position. You better pull back. You better pull out. And he just kept calling them in, fire, fire, fire. Uh, so his last command was to fire to the fire control center. And the dispatcher there told him, he said, the rounds, they're going to fall right on your position. Fox's last word were fire it. Okay. Now, when they when the American forces finally recaptured the town, they found the body of Fox among at least 100 dead German soldiers. So he called around in right on his position. in order to kill all those soldiers that was all around him. Okay. Now, for those deeds, or for that deed rather, he was awarded the Congressional Medal of Honor. And to pay further tribute to Lieutenant Fox, the toy company Hasbro, in 2005, they created an action figure G.I. Joe figurine to honor Fox, his deeds that he did that day by calling in artillery on his own position. They honored him so by making a figurine in his image. Um, that was Hasbro Toy Company. So he's, just thought I'd put that information out as well.
Is that information in your book?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay,
That's
great.
also in the book.
Okay, that's good to know. And what year again was that?
2005 is the
Okay.
year that Hasbro created the figurine, and I think it's probably priceless now. I doubt if you could order one now.
Do you have
Yeah.
one?
No, man, but one of my brothers do, and I've been trying. Every time we get together, he lives in New York, and his name is Captain Buffalo. And every time we get together, I ask him about the doll or about the figurine and say, well, why don't you let me hold it for a while? Let me hold on to it. I don't think he
And
trusts me.
and again, the name of that military person was who that the doll was made for?
Lieutenant John R. Fox, FOX.
Okay. And where was he from?
Oh God, I think. Oh boy, I have a book I've forgotten. I think he was from. Oh boy, where's my book? Where's my book?
That's all right. That's all
Just
right.
give
I
me.
thought you might have known offhand. No problem. It's all right.
Yeah, right offhand. Oh, here he is here. That's the division. I don't have his hometown here.
Okay,
I
it's all right. Not a
apologize.
problem. It's all right. No,
I don't have
no,
it.
it's all right.
But
That's all right. We can
uh,
look it up. No
on
problem.
Wikipedia, John
Okay.
R. Fox.
Okay. Yeah, I posted it on the bottom there on the banner so our audience can see it.
Yes, ma'am. That's it.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Oh, I should have put LT. I have LGT. Excuse me.
Oh, yeah. You have LGT. It should be LT
Right.
Lieutenant
Right.
John
Right.
R. Fox.
Yeah, I'll
Yeah.
fix that. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. So I'm looking to see if we have any questions or comments in our audience. I don't
Okay.
see any at this time. We are also live now on YouTube, and but
Oh, great.
I don't see any questions or comments.
Okay.
So I guess the next question is, what do you see the trajectory for your book? What would you like to see happen? What kind of marketing are you doing? Who is your audience that you're trying to reach out to? Those kind of things.
I'd like to, if I may, I'd like to really try to get it into schools because we just didn't have this when I was in school. And as I said, I wanted the book to be not an African American book, but an American history book. Because I think this is the part of our history, being an American that seemed to be overlooked. To read about and to hear about all of the exploits of the African Americans that have gone before me. I mean, just revolution all the way up to today. Just these are things that you just don't read or didn't at the time. Just didn't read about in history books. So I'd love to see it in schools across the nation. Um, that's the target audience. Well, in addition, everybody, every American. I think everybody could benefit from the book because here again, It's our history. It's American history, not African American history. I mean, it's pertaining to African American, but it's American history. This is us. This is what we were, and this is what we are. You know,
Right. Right.
uh, what I try to do when we give presentations in schools, I try to give the kids a homework assignment. And once I mention homework, they're like, "Oh wow!" But I tell them, I say, "Well, what I want you to do is this. I want you to go online and to look up 10, at least 10 prominent African Americans. Okay. And I give them a time date. I say, now you can start, say, back in the 1920s. That would include the Harlem Renaissance and just go all the way up to today. Okay.
Right.
2000 and wherever. Now, I want you to write a paragraph on each one of those African Americans. But now, here's a condition: you cannot mention athletes, nor can you mention entertainers. I mean, everybody knows about Michael Jordan and Beyonce, but how many people know about County Cullen, or Richard
Right.
Wright?
Right.
So I say, there's nothing wrong with being an athlete or an entertainer, but you just cannot mention them. And I say, if you just write a short paragraph on each and every one of these individuals, you'll find your knowledge of Black history and African American history will far exceed than everybody knowing about Dr. Martin Luther King, who was a great man. But it seems like every time someone mentioned Black history, the first thing they think, oh, Dr. Martin Luther King. He
Right.
was great.
Right.
He was great, but there's more to Black history than Dr. Martin Luther King. you
Right.
know, so
Exactly.
and we should celebrate not Black History Month, but Black History Year. Why should
Exactly.
we relegated to just 1 month? And at first, at the beginning, it wasn't even a month. It was what it was called Negro History
History.
Week.
Right.
Yeah,
Right. Right.
we only had a
Right.
week. you
Right.
know, so
Okay.
that's my goal, and
So,
that's my.
on that note, we're coming up to the top of the hour. So, a couple of things I wanted to
Oh,
do. I wanted to
yeah.
share a screen. I wanted to show the Buffalo Soldier Motorcycle Club, the national webpage. So, I'm going to see
Oh,
if I can
okay,
share
great.
that. Let me just see if I can do this right now. And this is the one I want to show. Okay, are you able to see that?
Not
Is it showing?
no, uh,
Okay,
no,
let's see.
nothing.
Okay, so here it is right here. Okay, can you see it now?
No, I haven't. Oh, there. Yeah,
Okay, so
yeah.
this is the
That's
page
it.
for the
Yeah.
National Association of Buffalo
Um,
Soldiers
that's Reed.
Motorcycle Club.
That's the founder. Yeah.
So I just wanted our audience to kind of see what that looks like.
Yes, that's it. That's the national.
It kind of gives you
Yeah.
an idea of what
Yeah.
that page looks like. And then I found, because our
Yeah.
library is based in South Florida, here's the
Hmm.
Miami Motorcycle Club, and they were one of our sponsors
Oh,
today
okay,
as well.
great.
So I wanted to
Yeah.
just take a moment to
So
acknowledge
brothers from Florida.
their support. And
Oh
this is
yeah, that's good.
the Buffalo Soldiers from Miami. And you can see
Yeah.
some of their activities that they're involved with, scholarship drives,
Yeah.
etc.
Yeah, that's great.
Then you're in Hartford, is that correct, Mr. Harris? Are you in Hartford?
That's fantastic. That's great. Yeah.
Okay. Are you in
I'm I
Hartford?
I'm sorry. It's I can't.
Are you in
You're
Hartford,
breaking up. I'm
Connecticut?
sorry.
Okay. My question
Am I
was,
in
are you?
Hartford?
Yes.
Uh,
Yes.
I am in Hartford, Connecticut. Yes.
Okay, good. So here's the Hartford, Connecticut.
That's us.
Yes, I wanted to share that as
There we are.
well. And for some reason, it's buffering, but at least you can see your
Yeah.
jacket.
Yeah. Yes,
Okay,
ma'am. That's
so
us.
great, great. So that's kind of
Yeah.
gives you a sense, everybody a
Oh, that's
sense of.
fantastic. That is
Okay, so I'm gonna
fantastic.
stop
Yeah.
sharing. Stop sharing. Okay,
Yeah.
so we're at the top of the
That's
hour.
fantastic.
I don't have any questions from our audience, so I'm
Okay.
like to. I did put a link in the chat for people that are interested in your book. I put the Amazon link if they want to purchase your book. That's in there,
Oh,
and
great. Great. Thank you.
I don't know if you want to add any other more contact or if you're fine with just the link for the book. You can let me know
Well,
what you prefer to do.
well, the link that we have, I'm on Instagram and under the title Historical Moments. Um,
Okay, that's
if
good
you
to
go
know.
to Instagram, Historical Moments, you can click on the link as well, and that would take you uh, to the to the book.
Okay, so you're on
Also,
Instagram.
Instagram, and
Historical moments.
I
Okay.
found Historical Moments,
Okay.
and the little link at the very bottom that'll take you to actually take you to Amazon, Barnes and Nobles, Apple iBook, I believe. And I found out just recently too that it can be purchased at any a bookstore, just if you just ask for the title, Historical Moments, you know,
Okay.
and should be able to get it.
Okay. Well, Mr. Harris, I don't see any more questions or responses or comments from our
Okay,
audience, but
thank
I'd
you.
like to thank you so much for
Yeah.
joining us today. And we look forward to hearing from you some more in the future. And we will support you in any way we can with your book getting
Thank
out
you.
there. And again, we want to thank you for your efforts and your hard work in putting this together. We thank you so much. And you know how to
No,
reach us whenever you want to
yes,
come down
man.
to Florida. You're
No,
always welcome.
it sounds great, but it's me. I should be thanking you for allowing me this opportunity to come in, share these things with you guys, and
Okay,
I truly appreciate it, and
sure.
I thank you. It was my honor just guys. Thank you.
All right. All right. Well, thanks again
Thank
for
you.
everything. You take care of
Okay.
yourself, stay strong,
Okay.
and we'll be in touch.
Yes, ma'am. Will do. Thank you.
All right. Thank you, everyone,
Okay.
from our audience for
Okay.
joining us. Again, this has been brought to you live from the African American Research Library and Cultural Center in Fort Lauderdale, Florida. We encourage you to check us out. We have a wonderful building, 60,000 square feet. We have a special archives and collections that's incredible. Some of our highlights includes our collections from Esther Roll. You may know that the actress that starred in Good Times was from Pompano Beach, South Florida. So she's one of our own here in Broward County. We also have manuscripts from Alex Haley. And we have a host of other things. Feel free to go on Broward County Libraries, African American Research Library, and you can see we have a lot of digital information. So if you're ever doing research related to South Florida, you can find it both online, and you can also set up an appointment to come in and meet with our archivists on staff. Again, I thank you so much for your joining us this afternoon. You could have been any place, but you chose to be with us, and we really thank you and appreciate it. Also want to tell you that this week we have a program called Let's Talk Africa that will be Thursday from 3 to 5 p.m. It's an international conversation between some Americans now living in West Africa, in Senegal and Ghana. And we also have some Americans that are involved in business and tourism and cultural heritage events. So we hope that you'll join us again live. Again, that's in 2 days, Thursday the 27th and that will be at 3:00 p.m. We also are getting ready for our South Florida Book Festival. That'll be in July, but it's right around the corner. We're already in June next week. So we want to encourage you to join our annual South Florida Book Festival. It will be online, so you'll be able to join us wherever you are in the world. And we appreciate, again, your continued support as we prepare for our 20th anniversary in 2022. So we're excited about that as we celebrate our 20th year next year. Again, my name is Ramona LaRoche, and I thank you so much for joining us. And do take care, stay strong and safe. Bye now.
Bye-bye.